all of these things are so necessary. And so I want to sort of open up the floor. And one of the things I want to lead with is the importance of moving beyond yourself, getting outside of that dark space and that dark corner in your life, helping your child get out of that dark space and that dark corner, encouraging the man in your life to get out of that dark space and that dark corner, because it can consume you. And so there are no things off limits today. Let's open it up. Let's talk. I'm fielding questions.
So reminder for people who, if you're on your phone and you want to come off of mute, you hit *6. Or if you're on Zoom, you can click the mute button on the lower left corner of your screen.
And if you don't feel comfortable coming off of mute, you can always enter your question in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so while we're waiting for someone to come on, let's talk about
Byron has his hand up.
Okay.
Hi.
Byron.
Sorry. Hi, my name's Byron. I have a question. One, thank you for doing this. Kelly, thank you also for doing this. I signed on today because I plan to come on Thursday as well. But I was just curious to start the conversation. But one of the things that I personally have been struggling with is I tend to know the tools. I talk about the tools. I help other people through the tools. People come to me when they have problems. But there are times, and I think that I am entering into a season now where I'm at a low, and I will definitely just diagnose it as a low, and like you said, may not share, may not feel comfortable talking about it because I know what my friends and I know what my family is going to say. They kind of just, it's not even masking it. It's like an open place where you can be comfortable and you can talk, but it's also a feeling of I've been here before. I know I'll get through it, or I know if I talk to this person, I know if I talk to my therapist. So if for people who may be in situations where they know exactly what they're going through, they are confident that they'll come out of it and they're trying to do the right things. Is there any tools or tips that you have, or even just words of encouragement on how to persevere through it, knowing that when you have a strong belief that you're going to get through it, if that makes sense? It's just it's being in it is always hard. And that's currently where I'm at.
Right. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to commend you for having the courage to come on. Again, it's not easy for men to admit we need help. So again, and you're not in a space that I haven't been in multiple times in my life. And it's a dangerous space. And here's why. And I tell people all the time, relationships are built between people who have receptacles, or call it a cup. When I enter into a relationship, be it romantic, be friendship, and even as a parent, I know that I have a responsibility to pour into the cup of the people that I engage. It's a part of the responsibility of reciprocity, but reciprocity also includes having them pour into yours. We tend to, especially in I know it's a very small sample of who you are, but I take you to be an empath just by what you shared with me. And when you're an empath, which I am, we tend to pour even if we know we're not going to get it reciprocated. Well, you tend to end up empty, and you tend to end up in moments like this more than you probably have to, because you're going to help people whether they're willing to pour back into you, or even if they're willing to help themselves. You're going to go get, you are a fixer. Well, here's the thing that comes out of that. Eventually you become empty. Eventually you find yourself in a place where it's dark, it's lonely, and you can have a million people around you, but you're empty. See, the emptiness, the loneliness you're feeling isn't proximity of people. It's the fullness of your work. And that's what we as men are built on. Our brains work front to back. We literally get our fulfillment from what we accomplish. And after pouring into so many people and having some of them not take your advice, some of them go on, and then a constant barrage of people just showing up because you're that person, you get overwhelmed. But you don't want to admit you're overwhelmed because you know what you're doing. You're skilled at it. You know, I'm that person, and there's a level of pride that comes with being that person. But what you're going to have to do in these, especially in a moment like this, is first of all, I'm going to give you a few things you can do immediately. One is mindful meditation and prayer. Be very specific about what you pray about. Be very specific about what you say about your situation. Journal and be very specific, not about where you're going through, but about where you're going. I was just sharing this with Kelly this morning. I initiate and start every day with gratitude. And when I say that, what I mean is I literally, when I wake up in the morning, before I roll over, before I move, I say thank you. That immediately triggers my brain to start searching for why I said it, just the way we're wired. So now my brain is only looking for reasons to be grateful. And I immediately follow the thank you with, I am immensely grateful. I am grateful for this moment. Now, when I say I am grateful for this moment, what I've done is I've taken myself out of everything that's going on in the past, everything that I've been anticipating going wrong today, and put myself in the very moment, which is where I change things. Where you change things is in the moment. How you see things in the future is what sets your attitude and your mood and your state. But when I sit up and say, I'm grateful for this moment, it says right now I'm breathing. And if I'm breathing, I'm still in the fight. If I'm still in the fight, I'm in control of the things that I have control over, which are the things that ultimately will change this temporal situation. And that's what situations and circumstances are. They're temporal. But if I give enough power to it by focusing on it, I elongate it. I make it, and I say this all the time, that pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And people say, what do you mean by that? I mean, you are going to experience loss. Um, I use myself for an example. In the past 2 years, I've lost a marriage, I've lost 2 siblings, and I've lost my mom. And I can choose to sit up and go, oh, it's me. Or I can sit up and say, you know what? I had great times with them. I learned a lot in my marriage. I grew as a man and as a husband. At some point, that's what I'm going to be. I'm a husband. And I tell men all the time, stop looking for a wife and become the husband you need to be, and the wife will come. And just those things. So the focus shifts from what went wrong to what I'm going to do about it. And the most powerful thing to managing trauma is being in control. Research says that the more in control a person is during a traumatic experience, the less likely they are to be permanently traumatized by it. That's why you'll get some people who experience the same thing, and you look at them go like they seem unfazed, and then you'll get other people, and they're in therapy 15 years down the line. Is the amount of control they had at that moment, or the amount of control they felt they had. But you're in control of what you do in the morning, how you start your day. And I'm also real big on how I end my day. I unwind and I literally take control. Uh, Not everybody is spiritual minded. Not everybody is religious or has a particular faith. I am a big believer in God as a higher power. I am not one to push real specific tenets on anybody, but you've got to have something that you believe is bigger than you for any of this stuff in this world to make sense. Uh, because the quickest way to an oh, woe is me, the life is happening to me mentality is to feel you don't have any influence in it. You're at the mercy of life, or God is picking on me, or life is picking on me. When you know there's something there and you're a part of it, you can sort of find your space. And so you have to determine in your world how this space is. But what I want you to understand is when you literally get ready to go to bed at night, you determine, and in my faith and understanding, literally, I spent time in seminary. Actually, out of the 2 doctors I hold, one is in theology. And one of my favorite passages, because it's so much psychology in it, is in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3-5. It says, though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, the physical realm, the tangible realm, but they are mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. Then it tells you what it is. It says, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And what is that? All the things that are coming to you telling you you can't win. All the things that are coming to you and telling you you are average. All the things that are coming to you and telling you you can't handle it. All the things that are coming to you and saying you're less than. And then all of a sudden it says, and what does it say after that? It says bringing every what? Thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Every thought into captivity. That's what I do at night. I determine what I'm going to dream about. Now, I didn't just magically do this. I developed a process and learning from others that came before me and just learning how to master it. Literally, that at a certain point in time before I go to bed, I start slowing down my thinking. And being a person who has a mind that goes 100 miles an hour constantly, if I don't, I won't go to sleep because my mind will search every possibility of every situation out there all night long. And so I have to do it to sleep. It's the way I start to produce melatonin at night naturally is I start to control my thinking. And so I have this thing that I remind myself of who I am and where I'm going. And I go through that meditation. And then I simply repeat, and this is mine. You come up with your other. I am whole. I am worthy. I am loved. And those things, when you search out the meaning of those words in totality, not just what they say on the surface, everything you need is in that. I am whole. I am worthy. I am loved. I have everything I need to become everything I desire, to overcome every obstacle. I am worthy of the things that my heart is yearning for, despite my shortcomings. And I'm loved. And if I'm loved, I'm giving love in return. And that's the entire encompassing of all we are. So, Byron, I wish you the best. I'm looking forward to you joining the conversation on Thursday. And hopefully at some point you'll get a chance to reach out to me and we can talk on a one-on-one because it's about lifting. But again, guard your self-talk, monitor your thinking because you have about 70,000 thoughts per day running beneath the surface of your conscious, most of which are the same thoughts daily, but you're unaware of them. But the wrong thoughts sneak to the surface and it creates all of the havoc. So the more you manage it, the better you are. So on that note, that was that. Thanks again to Byron for checking in. Sorry if I went a little long-winded.
No,
No, that
thank
was
you.
great.
Good to hear that. Thank you.
And Byron is amazing. Byron runs an organization called Wellness for Creatives, and is so in tune with who he is, and really a friend of ours, and has been here at SonRise doing a wellness workshop on wellness from a creative lens. So I just want to say thank you, Byron, as well. And thank you for sharing that. There's
Yes,
a
thank
question. Absolutely, Byron. There's a question in the chat that says, how can you help your teenage child heal after a traumatic experience? They do not like to talk.
Okay. And this is always going to be a challenge. And the first thing is to listen, even when they're not talking, they're talking. They're communicating, but ultimately they will tell you how to approach it, depending upon the significance of that traumatic experience, losing another parent, losing a sibling, losing a friend, car accidents, uh, which can be frightening, especially if someone else perished in the accident. Um, the survivor's guilt is going to be on top of the trauma. All of these things are there. And the challenge is the idea that the child doesn't like to talk, and that's okay. Sometimes they just need to hear. And that's the beautiful thing about a communication. I think what we just tend to think about when something's going on is tell me what's wrong. And sometimes they don't have the words. Sometimes people shrink or people become untrusting because of traumatic experiences. And no matter who it is, they don't want to talk, but sometimes they need to hear. They need to hear the things that say you're protected, you're loved, we're here for you. And it doesn't necessarily come in sit-down sessions. Hey, let's talk, because they're going to immediately get tight. Sometimes it comes in an unexpected card, an unexpected text message, a thoughtful, hey, let's go grab dinner. Let's go grab lunch. Whatever their favorite place has always been. Let's go do this. Let's go sit down. Um, and in more significant issues, it's going to be a tug and a pull, but professional help. A professional is going to be able to get through it. And again, there's no time frame. And I think what we in this microwave society where everything happens now, it doesn't happen at all. I think that we look for a quick fix in almost everything. Some things are simply going to take process. And I have had kids and adults sit in front of me and listen to me talk for 35, 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 sessions down the line, I can't get a word in. It's just being able to create an environment that allows them to feel safe enough to say what they really feel. Because kids have these preconceptions about parents that most parents have forgotten because it's been so long since they were in that situation. We know we love our kids. We know we have our best for our kids, but kids, number one, think they're smarter than us. Number two, think we're trying to control them. Number three, may know deep down inside how much we love them because of what we do for them, but feel like they need to breathe. You don't know what is holding your teen from wanting to talk. Some people aren't just good at sharing. And if you know that even if everything was great, they wouldn't talk, then they're just not good at sharing. So you've got to learn how to create an off-kilter communication method to where you're doing a lot of the talking just to get a certain amount of information that's going to probably be a fraction of the volume of your conversation, but it's meaningful. And then some kids who you couldn't shut up, who have become quiet, that's definitely a direct impact of the trauma. And more than likely, they need to get in front of someone who knows how. And I've said this before, and I'll venture to say it again. Kelly's heard me say it a million times. I'm embellishing, but a lot. I think it's really important to get people in front of people who look like them, at least in race, if not in gender. And the reason I say that is we are learning, and I have for over 2 decades written and lectured on the importance of understanding psychology out of the primary framework that we've always worked under. It's not just how you think, it's your experiences, which are different. It's cultural influences, it's your neurobiology, it's your genetics. It's all of these things are interconnected and they work together. And so a person that looks like me, nervous system has in some way been through what I've been through. No matter how fluent and well-educated they are, there have been those microaggressions that have attacked their nervous system. It is simply the way it is. No matter how well you're accepted into certain spaces, you're still not accepted. And then there are the bulk that get it on 10 almost daily. And so someone can understand that and relate to it and be able to communicate in a way that you understand it, not just from a linguistical perspective, but an emotional, psychological, and spiritual perspective as well. So it's a process of patience, of love, and I can't express that enough, love and execution in being the kind that, see, when we talk about talking or communicating, it's always verbally, audibly. And so when we don't hear from something or someone in any other way than that, we feel like we have silence. Communicate in your body language, communicate in your touch, communicate in your patience, communicate in the way that you move around them, communicate in your confidence about the situation. Because if they sense you're afraid and you're the adult and you're the person going through, and you may be terrified and you may be justifiably terrified, but if they sense it, they will inherit that anxiety. They will inherit that stress, and it will keep them anchored in the trauma. So you've got to walk in confidence. You've got to move in confidence. You might go in your room and cry. You might go in your room and go, oh my God, I don't have a clue, but I promise. And what you'll find is the love that you have as a parent, when you promise them that it's going to be okay, you'll start finding ways to make it okay. And now you've initiated the healing process. So I hope that that helped.
I'm sure it did. It helped me. So, lots of nuggets. I think when you talk about walking in confidence, some people talk about walking in faith, faith over fear. Dr. Vicki Johnson spoke a few weeks ago about the power of believing, the belief that everything is really going to be okay and that God's got it worked out. And our importance for us is to walk in that faithful space over fear. And I think that's what I hear you saying in terms of being confident and not showing the fear or the worry or the stress or the anxiety so that that energy is not assumed by, in this case, a teenage child. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Mhm.
It is immensely important to develop. And again, I'm not in any way suggesting that it is easy. And I'll address an extension by addressing the next question I see, which is Jill says that, yes, it may be beneficial to have therapists or psych facility that has providers, participants that look like us, but it's very hard to find those resources in our community. And then state line issues also make it harder. And it's 100, she's 100% right. It's one of the battles that I'm taking on now with clients that have children or young adults who have severe psychosis and severe psychological mental issues. As a parent of a son who struggles with paranoid schizophrenia, um, finding a place that, forget finding someone that, when it comes to state line issues, finding state line issues and state policies on how much you can influence what an adult child does. When you look at those things and you find, okay, they need help. Well, really, you can't get them help as an adult until they do something that allows the state to forcibly interject. And by then, now they're a part primarily of some other system that you don't want them to be a part of. And you get all these different things. And so you're trying to protect the child while giving them the resources they need. And then when you talk about state line issues, what I would suggest to Jill in that, then I'm going to go back to the bulk of what she's talking about. The state line issues is not every top quote unquote therapist is a licensed psychologist. And one of the things I wanted to do when I started this is break the mold, because the idea that someone's licensed means they're qualified, that doesn't even ring true when you talk about medical physicians or psychiatrists, which are doctors who have degreed in psychology as well and have passed the board in that area. What you have to find is a person that has the qualifications, the resume, and the work behind them that says they're good at what they do. And those people aren't guarded or limited by state lines. I literally work with people in Sweden, the UK, because I simply, when I work with people in those areas, I don't classify myself as a licensed psychologist. I classify myself as a psychology professional that does work. And what it does is it allows me to move in spaces that other people don't move in to make myself available. You have this great technology that we're using right now, and state lines will limit your ability to use that. And that's one of the problems. The idea that the person that you need to talk to has to be in your state in order for your child to benefit from it is absolutely ridiculous, or in order for you to benefit from it. And so what I suggest is doing research about, doing research about those who are equipped. They probably won't be listed as psychologists or psychiatrists or anything like that. They may be life coaches. But some of the greatest therapy I've ever gotten has been from a person who was quote unquote a life coach. You've got to find outside of the box, because one of the things that, again, I have really struggled to be an iconoclast in that area. of saying, this is the way they've always told you it had to be done. But licensing isn't about qualifications. Licensing about saying, I'm getting in on it. And I'm going to be an arm that controls, and it does protect because there are some charlatans out there, but I will tell you that I know more people bitten by people who were licensed than not. Um,
I
I
just shared your contact information in the chat as well.
Right.
Mhm.
And so the goal is to find the most qualified person, not the most credentialed, not the person from the most prestigious university, but the person who is literally given to the work. Because if I'm given to the work, it means something to me. Succeeding in my work is a passion. It's bigger than me. So I am going to give my clients that type of commitment. And there are others out there. And then that part of it, as far as finding, and the other thing is we need to encourage people who have a passion to help and have an inquisitive mind about psychology, about human behavior, about genetics, about all these different areas that are influencing how we behave. We need to encourage them to get into programs to where they can learn about it, so that they can become extensions of what we're trying to do. I stood on the shoulders of Dr. Naeem Akbar, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is actually the reason I got into psychology in the first place, watching her on Phil Donahue in 1985. And I've never looked back. They laid the foundation. And Dr. Naeem Akbar really laid the foundation on the importance of breaking out traditional psychology, which is automatically going to put you on the fringe anyway in mainstream psychology, and understanding that the Black experience is unique and that we must understand the uniqueness in that experience in order to explore the process of healing generations of trauma. And so, and also one of my peers, Dr. Jordan Grew, also has done an immense work on this side. And so there is definitely people out there to reach out to it, and it may not be in a traditional sense. And I think one of the problems, I know one of the problems I run into is insurance companies are probably not going to want to work with these people, or they're not going to want to work with insurance companies because it becomes a hassle. I do have people that are in Houston and a couple of other areas that I refer people to that will go through the bureaucracy and everything. I choose not to, but there are people out there that you can find. It's finding a fit. But my thing, when I choose anything at this stage in my life, from who changes the oil in my vehicle, and definitely to who I'm going to allow to sit in front of my child, or who's going to sit in front of me and give me advice, I want to know that it's more than just money. I want to know that they have a heart for helping. I want to know that I can lean into their expertise. And again, the trail is going to be there. You're going to have people who they've worked with. You're going to have their work that you can read. Um, as she stated, I'm releasing book number 28 at the end of this month. It's a chronicle of my growth, but it's also an expression of what I've invested in learning and knowing and sharing. And it's people out there like me. So the goal is to get outside of the box. And the box isn't going to be in your network, just not. And that's where everybody's looking in their network because that's what their insurance company is telling them to do. And you're going to probably have to get out of your network. I hope that that helps in some ways.
Absolutely. And thank you. And I see a hand up. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the information that you're sharing this morning. Dr. Rick, I just wanted to bring something up. I'm not an expert at it, but in my journey with my son, and he has gone through the process. He never really quite was diagnosed exactly. They were like unspecified, etc., because there were just a lot of things that did not fit for him. And in our journey, he started doing his own research. And he went in and started and became a certified peer counselor to really delve deeper into what was going on with him, what was going on that was impacting. And in his journey, he's brought to me neurodivergent, which fit him a lot more. And he was like, Mom, I think I might be on the spectrum. And as he was describing different things and giving me more things to research, I'm like, this kind of fits you a little bit more. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, because he's high achieving, has his college degrees, excelled academically with so much structure.
Mm-hmm.
He excelled so much with structure, but then with a lot of different and just people misreading him and just him being very unique personality. I couldn't believe that as a person who's one of my degrees, undergrad, one of my degrees was in special education, I totally missed it. And so once I started talking to more people professionally about it, understanding that, autism is just, it was 2020 during the pandemic that the American Psychiatry and the American Psychological Association apologized for their role in systemic racism. That just came out. And so they're just starting to look at it. So to your point, it's really relatively new in understanding and starting to look at some of the things that are happening in our communities and community of color as being in the realm of the autism spectrum. And it even goes to the fact that they're looking at Asperger's and a bunch of different things. And it just was so much that my son brought to me that I couldn't believe I missed. And I'm just been fascinated with digging deeper. And I went so far as to speak to other psychologists about this. And they very much were like, hey, yeah, this is relatively new. We're working on it. And I just didn't know your views on this. The district in which I'm working with is just also getting to the point where we're looking at it differently. And not necessarily, and we're looking at it because there's just been an overwhelming of overrepresentation in most restrictive settings for Black kids who end up having a lot of these behaviors compared to white kids, where they're like, oh no, let's come up with special programs to support you. And so I just wanted you to weigh in on that, being that it's just recently that I'm digging deep in it. And I'll just get off.
Okay, great. Actually, you are 100% on. I have been on this journey for quite some time, and I want to say probably 8 years ago, I wrote a position paper on the disproportionality of special education referrals for young Black boys, and the exploration of these certain designations in special education that are assigned certain things. When we start talking about being on the spectrum, we are learning this the verbiage, the understanding, and the expanse of knowledge concerning being on the spectrum is rapidly evolving. And there are different schools of thought. And on it, I know you mentioned Asperger's, which is actually an older term for people who are on the higher end of the spectrum. And you mentioned structure. Structure is extremely important for people who are noticeably and detectably on the spectrum. I won't get into detail into my deeper thoughts because, again, it's early in the stages of really truly exploring this thing. But what I can tell you is that there is a school of thought that high-end spectrum disorders, which includes Asperger's, are actually a part of evolution's way of teaching us to focus. If you notice someone who is diagnosed with Asperger's, they normally have certain spaces where they operate at an unbelievable level. If you were to test them in that particular range, they would test as a genius. Mathematics, music, anything numerical that can be counted or moved and measured in increments, they master. There's a story of a young Black artist who has an eidetic memory and is so mathematically gifted that they flew him in a helicopter over the skyline of New York, and he painted that entire skyline from memory to scale. These are the things that our brains are gifted to do. We've always had it, but we're so inundated with things that we can't stay focused on anything for 2 minutes. And it may be that evolution is saying, okay, we've got to get back on track. Each person is really gifted and designed to do something specific. But we inundate, even our kids, we inundate them with what we think they should be doing. What do you need to do when you grow up based off of what the world says is prestigious, that pays well, that whatever. And we miss who they are. And we force them down paths that aren't fulfilling. So we make them increasingly miserable. And they get increasingly frustrated because, especially kids on the spectrum, because they don't fit in. They are considered socially awkward. They, don't align. And the easy thing to do, especially early on, I mean, boys as early as 5 years old are easily referred as, in Black boys more than any other at a significantly disproportionate rate, referred to special education, and then assessed as having oppositional defiant disorder, ADHD, and a bunch of other things. And we never look at how can we teach to who they are rather than forcing them to learn through the structure we have created. And those are the things that we have to look at. And we really, truly put our kids in peril when we don't examine things. I'm real big at trying to find the gift of anybody I work with, whether they are 12 or 70. I want to know what your gift is, because if I can tap into that, healing is going to start with you exploring your gift, because that's what you were built to do. And so you're definitely on it. Your son is definitely on it. What's beautiful about that is he sought answers. He went looking. And it's about finding yourself. And, there's a point in time in age when a child, especially a male, starts to search for who he is. And he will act out when he cannot really truly define what he's going to be, why he's here, his relationship with God. Literally about 14, 15 years old, regardless of race, we have this place where we're transitioning from puberty to adolescence into young adulthood, and we don't have the answers. We get frustrated because we have these things that are innately a part of us. The natural aggression. We're bigger, we're stronger. We tend to be more agitated easily, which is really nature's way of saying, I made you bigger, I made you stronger to be a protector. But without anyone to say, this is who you are, that agitation, especially in an environment where you're constantly told people who feel and think like that are bad people, and you don't know what to do with it, you will find yourself in a place where you are really truly frustrated and acting out. That energy, I've heard, matter of fact, I think it was Regina King who's dealing with her son committing suicide, and she defined grief as love with no place to go. And man, I saw that and it just set me down, because you can't simplify it any more than that. But then I think that frustration and anger is simply, for a male, now it's different for a woman, two totally different ways of processing neurologically. But for a male, it can be something as simply as the growth of my masculinity. And I'm talking masculinity in the truest sense. They're just things that are going to naturally happen to empower you to be a man, which is what you're designed to be. And I teach against the use of the word toxic masculinity, because toxic behavior is the opposite of masculinity. They're not inclusive. They're mutually exclusive. But the more you use the word, the more people shun masculinity in general. You have to be very careful of uses of terminology. Now, are there a bunch of men behaving with toxic behavior? Absolutely. And we have to address that. But the true masculine nature does several things. A man protects. Matter of fact, I teach young Black males that before you are ever skilled and equipped to be a provider, you are physically equipped to protect. That's why you get stronger than her. The older you get bigger than her. You develop a natural sense of aggression. Why? There needs to be a willingness to use that strength and that size to defend. And so that's what that is. But if I don't understand it, it will be directed. It needs a place to go. And if where it goes is where all that energy goes is in my identity. And if I'm struggling with an identity crisis, there's going to be a lot of misplaced frustration, anger, and other negative emotions that we have to reel in. So there's work to be done in that area.
Well, I have to tell you, you're hitting it on the head. Tears are running down my face right now because he'd been trying to explain it and get me to understand it. And I mean, I'm in the field and I missed it. And it's what you've been describing is really what he literally has been saying. And it goes back to the point of him trying to get me to understand. And his brain just works at such a higher speed and rate and trying.
We lost you for a second.
Yeah, it went on mute.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what she's experiencing is what a lot of parents are experiencing with kids who are on the spectrum. And I've worked with young children and adults on the spectrum. I have a client now who, when he came to me as a young adult. He had what we will refer to as Asperger's, which is high spectrum. It's high on the spectrum. And he had this idea of what he wanted to do. He wanted to create an international organization that focuses on humanitarian work. And he wanted to use technology to do it. And technology in the area of coding, he was off the chain. But he wasn't a people person. Now, the crazy thing is I worked with him and he became open and we learned how to be concise with our communications. And he built a team. He moved to the DR and he hits me up. He said, guess where I'm at, Doc? And I'm like, where are you at? And he says, I'm living in the DR. And the people, every person that he brought in to work for him were, if you would have judged them on the world spectrum, were credentialed more than him. He's got doctors in engineering, doctors in this, and all these guys report to him. And I'm like, my guy. But the gift is finding the gift, nurturing the gift. I mean, if we go biblical, it says that your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. It didn't say your degree would. It didn't say how many schools you graduated from. It didn't say who you got a job with. It said your gift. And I think that a lot of this is forcing us to see our kids for who they are and not what we want them to be. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's scary because we come from the "'cause I said so" era. And so the idea that our kids have opinions outside of ours can be scary, but I love it because and what it does for me is every time I talk to somebody who's exploring things outside the box, it forces me further outside the box. I don't like the box. The box is where average happens, and average is the default setting of people who do what everybody else does. And that's not why you were created. There's a reason you're unique. And instead of punishing children for being unique, how about we reward them for thinking differently?
Dr. Rick, why didn't you tell me that when I got mad at him for removing his frame because he's like, I can't live in a box. All right, I'm gonna try to get him to be on the call next week with you. I just, there comes a point when I have to just say, I'm trying to just get him with the resources of people that can help him with his brilliance. I mean, it's something that he's been taught his whole life. He's been always elevated by others. And I just realized am at that point where I wish I could be like the person in the chat who was able to say, hey, I'm infinitely wealthy. Here's what you can do to set up what it is. But his ideas are so great and it's faster than me. And so right now I'm just trying to figure out who can help with this fast pacedness, brilliance thinking, because I'm out of my lane. And I don't know if there are other parents who are at that position. And maybe that's part of the piece, Kelly, that having this to make
Yes.
those connections, because a lot of it is the children are brilliant and I can't hold him in a box. It's just not working. And I don't want to lose my son and stop his dreams, literally knowing that his name means mankind's defender. Like, I know he was born with greatness. I just didn't know how to deal with it. I don't know. Thank you.
Well, yes. I think, well, when we know better, we do better. That's the whole
Yeah.
point. And
Right.
that's so beautifully stated. And what the woman says in the chat is, you have described our son to a T. I think that's what you're referring to. My husband and I decided to homeschool to support his unique gifts and talents. I described him as seeing the world in 3D. That's so beautiful. He's now launching a business in esports, and it's his niche. So incredible. I just want to share a quick thought, and then Dr. Wallace, please. Um, Spent the last 2 days interviewing 12 incredible people, all with disabilities, some visible, some non-visible. The last man yesterday was a 19-year-old autistic man who speaks with a computer, and brilliant. And his mother said that they told her when he was 6 or 7 that he had an IQ of 50. And she literally said they called him a retard, that word. And he is an incredibly brilliant writer. And people who were amputees, and someone got shot and was in a wheelchair, and incredible people, and they all spoke with such positivity, and they called themselves handy capable. And so even these things that we're talking about, being on the spectrum, or autism, or so many different things. I think I love the word that you said. I think it was you, Dr. Wells, using their brilliance, seeing their brilliance,
Right.
and bringing that to the forefront, which is what this other person says in the chat as well. So really, it's a huge paradigm shift. Someone says, this is a paradigm shift for me. I'm a special educator and did not diagnose my gifted and brilliant son. Did you want to comment on that, Dr. Walls? We have time for just a few more moments, and then Dr. Vicki Johnson's going to close us out with a prayer. Did you want to have a few last words?
Sure. I think the term paradigm shift is ideal for what we're talking about here. The paradigm is basically the socio-mental lens through which you view life. It's how you examine, analyze, and process everything. And the paradigms that we've created is based off an antiquated idea, an antiquated notion of what's possible, an antiquated notion of how people are supposed to move and operate, an antiquated system of teaching our youth. And we judge everybody by how they move through this antiquated system. Prime example of a person saying that their kid, their child, their son, their kid was diagnosed with an IQ of 50 and the term retarded was used. Well, that was a time that that term was literally considered a legitimate medical term. Different things like idiot, imbecile, moron, and retarded were different levels of low IQs. And so they expanded. And so they were using what they thought maybe was an applicable based off of that. But the thing is, you're judging on an antiquated way of evaluating. And I have written on IQ testing extensively. So the paradigm shift is to explore, to free yourself of the constructs that surround you that say, this is how it's done, and say, no, the goal is to do it without harm. How I do it is my business. How I do it is going to be reflective of what's best for me and my family, not what everyone else says it has to be. And what you do is you start to see things you didn't see. And when you get a child that's trying to express it, I heard real briefly, and then I'll be done. I heard an interview with Terrence Howard, who was talking about synesthesia. And he said that he was actually diagnosed, I think, in the 2nd grade and put in special education because he said this this color blue has such a great smell to it. And they told him that, colors don't have smell. He says, they absolutely do. And he started, and he wouldn't stop and said, put them on. And what happens is every child is actually born with synesthesia. It's the ability to experience things through more than one sense. So I can see a color and I can taste it and I can smell it. And it's a way of applying and experiencing life. That's one of the reasons kids put things in their mouths when they first start. And we immediately don't do it. That's their first sensitized. That's how they sense things. It's their sensibility. So what he was talking about was that we are going to force you in this box. There's no way that you can smell that color. And because you smell that color, something's wrong with you. And I operate from a different spectrum. Somebody says this happened. I don't say it didn't happen. I start asking, how did it happen? And when you explore that, it takes you outside of the boundaries of what is. Everything that we see now, including this session that we're having, where people from different places in the world are watching one dude from Houston talk, is because somebody took something that people said was impossible and explored it. And that's how things change. So yes, you do need a paradigm shift in that. And I think that the conversations we're having today are the beginning of something great for each person as an individual, but also for us as a collective. So I'm extremely excited on that.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And I just want to remind people that this Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Dr. Rick Wallace will be hosting a safe space for men. And so I just put the link in the chat that you can register at the sonriseproject.org or the sonriseproject.com. Scroll down a little bit. You'll see it's called Brothers Unfiltered. And it will be this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. with Dr. Rick Wallace. And so encourage your men in your lives to be there. Did someone want to say something, or was that Dr. Vicky coming off of mute? I felt like I heard something just now. Okay, well, I put that information in the chat. Again, you can register at the sonriseproject.org. Thank you, Dr. Wallace, for being here this morning, and for everybody who's here. Really appreciate all of you for getting up early and for being here in this support group space for one another. And I'm so appreciative of that, appreciative of you, Dr. Rick. And Dr. Vicki Johnson is going to graciously come off of mute and close us out with a prayer this morning. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good morning, Dr. Rick. I am in my car screaming. I'm so glad I'm by myself, and people looking at me, driving by me, probably like, she has lost it. This has been phenomenal. This has just been so wonderful. And I am excited about Thursday. I've been sharing the link for the call with every man I can think of, and asking them to share it. So thank you for this. As you were talking, I was feeling like, well, maybe I grew up on the spectrum, talking about your mind racing and just the insight. So my prayer today is just thank you. Expressing gratitude to God on behalf of all of us who are on the call, for you taking us as parents out of the box. And thank you for giving us permission to allow our children and our grandchildren to be raised out of the box. So God, we thank you for your wisdom today. And we thank you for your liberty and your freedom, and for reminding us that we all have your mind, the mind of God. And so, Father, as we go further into this day and into this week, we give you extreme gratitude for choosing us to raise the children that you have blessed us to birth and parent in this world, and for the wisdom that you've deposited in our lives through Dr. Rick and other professionals that our visionary Kelly has brought together for us. We're grateful, and we give your name glory. We give you honor. We give you praise, and we thank you that all things are working together for our good and ultimately for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Dr. Rick. Just phenomenal.
You are welcome.
Amen. 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 Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rick. Thank you, Dr. Vicky. And definitely share the word about Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. And you can register at the sonriseproject.org. Have a beautiful, peaceful day. Thank you again.
Bye.
Bye.